It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today we are talking about Payback'S A Witch by Lana Harper.
Indeed.
Would you like to do the plot or shall I?
So Emmy is from a secret town of magical witches and is one of the 4 founding magical families. And had her heart broken as a teenager by the jerk scion of the most powerful of the 4 magical families. And she ran off to the big city of Chicago, never to come back. But now she has come back, and she is teaming up with her high school crush, Talia, the sexy tundra wolf, and her best friend, to try to rig the magical Olympics to determine who gets to be the biggest magical family in this suburban Illinois town.
Cool. So how I would describe this book is, are you familiar with the Hallmark Christmas movie?
Yes, this is absolutely non-Christian Hallmark Christmas movie.
Yeah. If the listener is not familiar, the Hallmark cable channel produces a direct-to-TV movies every holiday, which all have the same plot, which is that a successful career woman comes back to her little town and discovers the true meaning of happiness, which is being a wife in a small town rather than a successful career woman. Although she may also figure out how to have it all. And she usually picks the hometown boy with a heart of gold over her rich, successful businessman current partner.
Yes.
We don't have the current partner in this one, and the hometown boy is in fact a necromantic lesbian.
Yes.
But otherwise, all the beats really shake out. And the major drama in this book is that she is from the 4th richest family in town, and the dude who broke her heart in high school is from the 1st richest family in town, and this
power differential is such a big
Yes.
deal. She has such an inferiority complex over being from the 4th richest family in town, especially because they're the boring ones.
Indeed, but trust us, it all turns out okay in the end. So are there lesbians in this book?
Yes, the love interest is a lesbian. She identifies as a lesbian and had one rebound after a disastrous lesbian breakup fling with Rich Boy, which ended badly.
Yes, she's certainly a lesbian. Our protagonist is bi or pan
bi.
or whatever.
Yeah, or pan or whatever.
Are there wizards?
Basically, everybody in this book is a wizard.
Correct. I mean, they're witches, but they're wizards, and there are, of course, conflicts. We said that there is a Harry Potter style magical duel thing in here. It's very Harry Potter style magical duel. Why should you read this book?
Well, if you like Hallmark movies, or if you like the sort of, chick lit kind of books about, which have a similar plot of, either girl goes back to hometown and gets it all, or, girl has romantic misadventures and lands the girl, but you want magic, then I think this book is probably for you.
I would say this is the funniest book that we have read for this podcast. Not for the reason, not on purpose, as far as I can tell, but I don't know. The author is dead. I think that if you choose to read this as a satire, it's incredibly funny, particularly near the end.
Yes, that's true. I feel
as such, I enjoyed it a lot more than some of the other books, some of the more serious books that we've read for the podcast, purely because it made me laugh a lot.
I just was not able to read this one as a satire, though it did occasionally make me laugh.
Yes. If you're not willing to go into it with that mindset, I cannot recommend this book to you. As to why shouldn't you why you shouldn't read it. It is a missive from a completely bankrupt moral system.
And not even in a way that's, that's interesting or whatever. It's just it really feels like the book assumes that you totally buy into the bankrupt value system of everybody in this book.
Yes. So if you are allergic to, for one of lack of a better word, I'm going to call it basic white women shit. You're going to have a really hard time with this book.
But honestly, I feel like that is unfair to basic white women, because a lot of the pushback against basic white women comes down to misogyny. And a lot of the reasons why I don't like this book are not about misogyny, and they're not about, oh, how could I ever move back to the suburbs? They don't have good sushi and fancy cocktails. Oh, wait, they do have fancy cocktails. Never mind. This decision has gotten easy. It's not that stuff. Who cares about that stuff? It's the idea that, it's the idea that four families should be controlling everything, and that, that the way to deal with a broken system is to simply cheat so that you're on top of it instead of doing anything against it. And the fact that just none of these people are particularly, just really seem to care about each other, even the ones who are ostensibly best friends or in love.
Yes, it's really remarkable. When I say basic white girl shit, I suppose what I maybe should say instead of that is lean in girl boss culture. Karens and girl bosses, basic white bitches, tiger moms, soccer moms, wine moms and witches, white women's tears that disguise white men's sin. That's what they say when you try to lean in. Because everybody in this book is so mean to each other, all the time, even if they're on the same side, and and this is celebrated as a virtue. It's the implied bitch in the title is the sort of badge of honor. Yes, we're all greedy, hostile, shitty people. Isn't that great?
This book genuinely made me rethink my defense of chick lit.
Yeah, it's not a good look for chick lit.
It is not a good look for chick lit, and the reason why I put this on the list, and I think after this we should jump into the spoiler zone, is that I actually feel like this is, despite the fact that this involves wizards and lesbians in conflict, I feel like the value system of this book is the antithesis to your classic wizards versus lesbians. This is queer desire as the regressive reactionary force. But this is celebrated as a good thing.
Yes. And yeah, no, as a such, that's another reason why maybe you should read it if you buy into the queer desire is the revolutionary force deal. Because this book demonstrates to a T that it doesn't have to be. This is diversity when, the FBI is hiring lesbians now, or, whatever you want it to. Yeah. Anyway.
Also, another reason you should not read this book is if you went to the University of Chicago, because the main character went to the University of Chicago, and clearly the author has not even bothered to read the university's webpage.
You don't remember our famous mascot, Phil the Phoenix?
We actually did have a stupid Phoenix mascot. No, the University of Chicago doesn't. She was a business major. We don't have a business major.
Yeah, I know.
The University of Chicago offers absolutely no useful majors whatsoever, except for maybe computer science. Anyway,
yes, she chose the University of Chicago because it's a prestige thing,
right?
In the right basic area, and that is really the key to the entire book. But before we get to the spoiler zone, content warnings. Everybody in this book is an alcoholic.
Yes,
and the narrative does not understand this or acknowledge this. Everybody is constantly drunk and constantly talking about drinking.
Yes.
If you
to an extent that it actually is, has negative effects on their life and decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that I was going to say they're all functional alcoholics, but not even they're barely functional alcoholics.
And I will admit that this may be part of the reason why I had such a negative reaction to this book. But other content warnings.
I mean, not bad breakups.
Yeah.
There's really no stakes here.
There's a lot of extremely unhinged, awful behavior being celebrated as a positive, but like, I'm not.
Nobody's gonna die. Nobody's getting like
this. Yes, the stakes are
injured.
extremely low.
Yeah, the stakes are about an idea of gentrification that I can't even wrap my mind around.
This book celebrates gentrification as a good.
Yes. It just has to be a particular kind of gentrification.
Right.
Well, this street just used to have auto parts stores and useless shit like that. But now there's 1,000 little boutiques where you can buy a cute little hat. They all smell like sandalwood, which goes with the legal weed. Get yourself a cup of frozen yogurt and a bottle of bubble tea.
Anyway,
so
spoiler zone.
Onto the spoiler zone. This book uses the word normie instead of muggle, and Emma thinks it's a slur. If that hasn't whet your appetite for the spoiler zone, I don't know what will. Oh my god, this book was so funny. I don't even know where to begin.
Part of the reason I put this on this list is as soon as I got to her, fairly early on, looking at her, love interest, Talia Abramov, is that her name?
Yes, that's her name.
And saying, this woman is like a tundra wolf, but sexy. I figured that you would at least get a fair amount of, find a fair amount of unintentional hilarity here.
Well, I mean, that's supposed to be a joke, right? That's supposed to be funny.
It sort of is supposed to be funny, but like...
But it's supposed to be like epic, girl boss shit.
Right.
Like my first clue was early on where she says bully in the British sense, woot and huzzah in the same sentence.
Yes.
And it's like, how old are you? Where are you from?
This book very much reads like a fan fiction, written by somebody who's in a different country and has never bothered to get beta readers from that country. This has the same feel as, an American trying to write, fan fiction for a British property, or the 50 Shades of Grey lady who's trying to set things in Seattle. Just this idea that you can inhabit you can just make stuff up and it does not actually matter whether or not, and like, I'm really not sensitive to whether people sound American or whatever, but
yeah, no, they sound like Nobody from Nowhere, which is, very appropriate. American aristocrat, so proud of your family history. It goes back all of 200 years. And all that time you haven't acquired your own culture. To be rich is to be from nowhere. To be rich is to be from nowhere.
Honestly, they sound like my cousin who married a British guy and now always sounds like she's faking an English accent.
The thing is that it's all... I think what the intention is there, and I think that there is some intentionality to it, is that it's all supposed to be part of this sort of heightened quippiness. I'm going to blame what's his face, Stephen Moffat, for this. I think this is like
to be fair, I think that this kind of heightened quippiness does also happen in chick lit.
It's not, Stephen Moffat didn't invent this.
Right. What I'm saying is that this is drawing on two separate traditions of heightened quippiness.
Yeah, I've called it action movie quippiness previously, but this is a slightly different species of it.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, I said something that's kind of a little weird, and that's the joke. Mm-hmm. And, oh, I said something that's just kind of mean, and that's the joke. Right?
Which again, like, I have, honestly, that is I have the kind of aversion to that could require a content warning. So
right. No, it's none of the things that are supposed to be funny are funny, except when the dialogue gets bananas enough to be a sexy Arctic wolf, was it?
I think it's Tundra Wolf.
Tundra wolf. And I mean, who can't relate to that, honestly? But when she calls Talia a sexy wolf, it's not in a furry way. Might be in a fascist way, but it's okay 'cause it's gay.
No, like, the sexy Tundra Wolf thing was genuinely funny in a way that it did. You're right. It felt like it could be intentional. It's just
right, but it's funny in like, you know, Charlie Sheen, I've got tiger blood kind of funny. You know, it's absolutely like, it's like cocaine soullessness kind of funny. But the plot itself is such a rich mine of comedy. Like the dawning realization that all of this is about how she is part of the slightly less rich aristocratic family in this town.
And the basic, and also the fact that this is that, you know, which aristocratic family of four is going to run this town entirely boils down to, because there's only four of them. Of course, the number one guy slept with like a member of every family. There's not that many people in the small town, but
right.
You know, the fact that people's high school bad behavior, like romantic behavior, is what is determining the like politics of this town for the next 50 years.
Because they're all still in high school in their brains. Like
they are, yes.
She accuses this guy of being like from frat boy central casting at some point. Like she says, oh, he never got out of college, but none of these people ever got out of high school, so he's one up on them, you know?
Right.
In that way.
Like,
and it's like this book actually fails at being misandrist because it cannot make the dude more loathsome than they are.
Yes.
No matter how hard it tries.
Like
you know?
I was reading this book and I found myself, I mean, like, I didn't want to root for the dude because he is awful, but he's awful in like a sort of generic frat bro, inconsiderate way that, you know, but like none of these,
like he seems to be having emotions, you know,
right.
Like to the pretty much to the same extent that the rest of them are. Like I'm sure, I don't think that the level on which he feels regret is any less deep or authentic than the level on which any of these other people feel hurt.
Yes.
You know, there's nobody to root for here. And so you can enjoy it as just like watching awful people as if they were zoo animals.
Yeah.
And, but the other thing that I really enjoyed about this book is the magic system, because I've never seen a magic system quite like it. When I said earlier that everything in this book is about her being part of the fourth richest family in town, it's because magic is generational wealth.
Yes.
And nothing else in this story.
Yes. Which does make me wonder if your reading of this as a satire, you know, is true, because it works so well as a metaphor for this, and maybe we are supposed to see how utterly empty the idea of magic is. I mean,
I'm absolutely willing to go with that, you know? Like, I mean, down to these really great subtle touches, like what she does for a living.
Right. The fact that she has fled her small town. She's fled being from the fourth richest family in her small town to go off and live in Chicago. And she works as the marketing person, I think, acquisition sourcing person. She works for one of those subscription boxes, except that this time the subscription box is for like new agey, fake Wicca stuff of, you know, like crystals and essential oils and dream journals.
So the magic, how magical power in this book works, you can marry into it. So it's not actually genetic magic.
Right. It is location based.
It's location based because when you get to Chicago, nobody gives a fuck that you're from the fourth richest family in this podunk little town anymore, you know?
In like Long Grove, Illinois.
Exactly. So it's like nobody is looking at you with that inherent, respect for your status, which status is literally all anybody cares about in this book.
Yes.
Which is why getting dumped by this guy hurts her so much. It's not because she loved him; it's because that it was a rejection of her based on her status.
Yeah. Because because he specifically is like, oh, well, I can't marry somebody from your family.
Right. So the reason magic fades when you leave this town is because nobody cares anymore. But what she does in response to this is that she creates one of these subscription services, and all of these subscription services are
I don't
pretending
think she creates it. I think she actually gets a job at one.
Right. She gets a job at this place that it pretends to be luxury goods. All these subscription services in real life pretend that they're like, she says that they're locally sourced and handcrafted by local Chicago artisans, question mark. And they're meant to be giving you a sort of a simile of what actual wealth lets you live like for the low cost of $50 a month for a cardboard box full of crap from China. And
which in this case is, crystals and essential
and crystals,
oils.
but in this case, it's a literal simulacrum of the magic.
Right.
And back in her childhood, she says, "Oh, I didn't get the same palpable hit of magic off of our, reprinted grimoire than I did off of the real thing. It's because the real thing is
generational
monetarily
wealth.
valuable." Exactly. This is the relic because it would sell, because it's an actual first edition. It would sell for an enormous amount more than your family's, than your home thing that's been handled by children and shit. So, and like everything that she is attuned to, because she loves food, she loves booze, she loves sex, she loves coffee, she loves anything that you could define as a luxury in life.
She's not that much into clothing, actually.
That is true.
Or shoes. Like, because a lot of chick lit is about, the luxury fantasies are about clothing, are very much, about like appearance and raising your status by being hot, but in a very conventional way. And she's not into that at all. She's into, physical experiences.
Yeah. Which, puts her like in terms of her personal alignment, she's therefore more like I am than the classic, chick lit protag. So, I relate to this. That's fine. Who among us has not gotten overly excited about an old book? Or a good cup of coffee. I have to say that I was reminded of someone by her coffee snobbery.
My coffee snobbery is because I worked as a barista in Seattle.
Yes, I know you came by it honestly.
It has nothing to do with generational wealth, of which I have none.
I was actually considering doing a bit where I was going to say, but don't you like this? Emmy, she reminds me so much of you, but I decided that I couldn't even keep it up for like 5 seconds. And so I think like the happy ending is her realizing that despite the fact that her family still is not going to have as much money as the richest family in town.
No, it is because she got given control of the magic supply for the next 50 years.
Right, so they're going to be rolling in it too. So there's absolutely at no point any separation between money and authenticity, money and magic, money and happiness.
Right.
It's all about how much you have.
Yes.
And these people are all, as we pointed out, drunk all of the time because their lives are so appallingly empty. And I feel sad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you said earlier that like this had retroactively like made you less likely to want to defend chick lit. I'm like, but if somebody who feels like this watches a Hallmark movie or reads this book and is like, yeah, I should go back to my shitty suburb. Did I say suburb?
Yes.
My shitty suburb. And that will mean that they're no longer in the cities, and that's a net win. So
I don't know. I actually feel like it's good when people from the suburbs come to the city sometimes. Like, you know, that
Not
there aren't
these
like
people.
Okay, that's fair. But I mean,
No, I'm
yes.
talking specifically about rich people.
Yes. If only this could sell rich people on going back. Yes, go back to Long Grove or wherever. Because we go. There's nowadays you can get sushi there.
Exactly. All of the amenities have been brought to you because they have been sucked out of the urban centers. So you can just go back to where you fucking came from, you parasites. Come on, baby, eat the rich. Put the bite on the son of a bitch. Don't mess around. Don't give me no switch. What are you looking at me for? Okay, my parents are kind of well off, but it's not like they're not like billionaires or anything. Put down that fork.
Right, but the thing is, this book is so sad because, you've got this woman who, yes, she grew up in, sort of perfect circumstances of a loving family and everything that she ever wanted except for being one of the first, a great best friend who's like the second richest family in town. And, got into a really good school and, had her heart broken and went, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to, go off and have a different job, even if it is sort of selling people the fake version of my childhood life. But she goes and she has a chance to sort of become a person who's not super invested in the really dumb status stuff of her hometown. And she succeeds at that mostly. She's actually pretty happy with her life, and it's
just when you thought you got out, they drag you back in.
And then she goes back, and the fact that, that this is her win is that she comes back and everything gets handed to her again. Her cousin who's been trying to take over the family business gets shoved out of the way and everything gets handed to her. And she's like, yes, clearly I never did want to be more than a daughter of this rich family. Mm-hmm. I never actually did need to develop a separate personality or ambitions.
Well, we say it's a waste, but what's being wasted here? Who cares if some random girl individuates? Let's be real, why not just be happy? What's really being wasted here? More like to the this is in fact actually intentional satire side of the scale. Like she literally says maybe money can buy some of the finer things in life. And that's like when she's stating the moral of the story, during the denouement, that seems so on the nose that it can't be unintentional. But yeah, no, you can absolutely read this as the tragic failure to fly of a human being. She went to become her own person, decided that there was something missing because it turns out that that's real life. When you have to think about things and go your own way, you might feel hollow and lonely sometimes. But no, she can go back to her hometown where everybody will always treat her well because she is an aristocrat and not think about anything anymore, ever.
And also, she is framed as clearly the person who deserves to win the contest. The contest that she's not even competing in, and yet somehow wins anyway. That
was
mostly
very funny.
Yeah, no, it was hilarious. But her reward for enabling the cheating of her best friend's brother and her crush / girlfriend is that said girlfriend wins the competition and says, actually, my family is too drunk and Russian to be trusted with responsibilities. Why don't you take over the town?
It's so good. It's so good. You won the contest that you're not actually supposed to be a part of. You show up those hoity-toity, slightly richer than you people, and it turns out that your family was the most important family all along because you rediscovered your roots, your colonial roots, from these people who. Can I actually, before we get into that part, can I pitch you the sequel to this book?
There actually is a sequel to this book, but yes.
Okay, I haven't read or looked at the summary of that, but here is my sequel to this book. Emmy finds out that the reason that the haunted woods around the Abramov's place are full of ghosts is because of all of the natives who were here when their ancestors came, who got massacred and enslaved. And that makes her very sad. But then she does a magical land acknowledgement, and the ghosts all go happy into the beyond.
I genuinely don't think that this series is capable of acknowledging, the incredibly colonialist founding myth of, yes, the 4 founding families came and just happened to find in the middle of Illinois this completely this completely untapped resource of magic that nobody was using. So we settled and founded a town so that we can use it.
Was just there. It was absolutely just there. Nobody made that. That wasn't a holy site, for example.
It would have been a crime to just leave it.
Oh my God.
Who knows, that power could have ended up in the wrong hands.
While she was in Chicago on the Michigan Avenue Bridge, Emmy would have seen the statues of white settlers cutting down the savage natives on their journey. Did it make her think, or did it make her horny? It's just breathtaking, really, which is why it makes me think this has to be on purpose. But it's not on purpose, is it?
I mean, the thing is that it is either a note-perfect parody of both chick lit and also, like, Harry Potter-influenced fantasy. Or, more likely, it's somebody who really wants to meld those 2 strains of wish fulfillment.
Yeah, no, I mean, it feels very calculated, but, like, maybe they did that too hard. Like, I mean, when you get past a certain point of cynicism, it just becomes parody, whether you wanted it to or not. And again, it was very funny. And there are some very funny lines in the book. Can I add to Sexy Tundra Wolf Rabbit Hummingbird?
Yes, I forgot about Rabbit Hummingbird.
The image of foam coming out of the very end of that long beak was very funny to me. She at one point refers to the clamoring of her loins.
Yes.
Which, I want to know how far away you had to be to hear that.
So I have some questions about, did you do the audiobook?
I did do the audiobook, and the audiobook did indeed have the questions for discussion.
I was going to ask
at the book club with your other lean-in girl boss girl pals.
This is one of the things that makes me think it's not a parody. Is it comes with questions.
This is an instruction manual for how to be the most venal piece of shit imaginable.
Especially because the questions, I gotta say, are not good questions. Do you think it's likely that Emmy will spend much time in Chicago in the future? How do you think she and Talia will navigate splitting their time between Thistle Grove and the city?
Everything will turn out good.
I don't actually care. Like, that's not actually interesting. Yes. If you could visit just one of the Thistle Grove venues, which one and why?
Oh my God. No, I didn't actually listen to that. The mere fact that it was there was that was the funniest thing in the entire book. I mean, and it had a lot of competition. And it's worth noting that this town feels very much like the town in Harry Potter, with like each of its, its magical bookstore, magical bar, magical orchards. Yeah, no, I mean the setting is 100% lifted. I will say, I will give this author her due. The actual magical like fight scenes / testing bits, not terrible. The author is not bad at writing action.
No, she's not. It's true. Like they're The magical races are actually, magical races and competitions are actually pretty easy to follow. And they don't last too long. Now, part of that's because I'm not sure how interested she is in them, but
she's not. She's way more interested in writing awful dialogue, and she's way better at writing the action scenes than she is at writing the awful dialogue.
Well, and I think part of that is that I actually think that a thing that a lot of action scenes have is too much. They get bogged down in detail so that you can't actually follow what's going on very well.
Right, because the author has spent too much time imagining all of these cool mechanics.
Exactly.
And wants to get all of them.
And because these are actually fairly stripped down, they're fairly stripped down and mostly exist as a way to, show little revealing character moments. And so that actually works really well.
Segue to the mom. Let's talk about the mom. I think that it was really, really funny the way that the passive aggressive guilting shit followed by love bombing that the mom is doing was out of the manipulative parent textbook, but also the fact that her explanation for why she didn't try to intervene or talk to her daughter at any point about why she left town and never talked to them again for years was that she didn't want to pry.
Yes.
And that her not wanting to pry came back from when her daughter was 16 years old and in a sexual relationship with somebody. Because this reminds me of the parents of rich friends that I've had. Because I think that fundamentally there is something in that culture where parenting is beneath these people. They think that level of emotional investment is either unavailable to them at all or seen as tacky,
Yeah, I can see that.
Getting down and dirty and messy with your daughter's relationships and maybe helping her as she's going off the rails and being devastated by this thing. That's not for me. I'm too elegant for that. Teenagers in general are too messy for my personal elegance. So I'm just going to not talk to my daughter for 5 years until she sees the error of her ways and comes crawling back. And then I'm going to very gently torture her emotionally until she agrees to live here again.
Right. Which, again, this is framed very much as, a little bit eye-rolly, but fundamentally loving.
Yes. No, the book is not aware of how awful all of the people in this town are.
Yeah, and it's funny because, the I don't want to pry is also really funny because by the time it comes, the mother has spent the entire book prying, including almost walking in on her and Talia making out.
Yes. Her mother's a magician. She obviously knew what she was doing.
Right.
Talia, who at one point refers to being a nasty woman, which means that the Abramovs are Hillary voters. I just wanted to mention that. Gee, it's kind of ironic that the Russians would be Hillary voters, you guys, isn't it? Something you said earlier reminds me. You were saying earlier that one of the reasons the action sequences are so clean and readable is because we don't get bogged down. Do you know where the author puts that level of interest in lore and fiddly little details?
Oh, the rest of the book, but especially the whole everything involving the Abramovs.
Yes, but in particular the drinks.
Yes, that's true. There's such loving
the amount
detail.
of time is spent on the novelty Halloween cocktails. Just on the novelty Halloween cocktails, and then on what's on the drinking menu at the Abramovs' party, and what's on the drinking menu when they go out to dinner together. And, it's this is, to some degree, this is also spent on the food and the sex. And again, to this book's credit, the attraction feels real.
Yeah.
Because any kind of desire, this book understands.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that's where the literary imagination here is, in figuring out genuinely horrific sounding sweet drinks for people to drink while at the same time looking down on people who like sweet drinks.
Yes. Yeah, there's the whole thing where their whole flirty banter near the beginning where Emmy is basically insulting Talia's taste in, girly sweet drinks. And Talia's like, no, we're not the suburbs you remember. We also have slightly less sweet, girly sweet drinks. And Emmy's like, oh, maybe I need to rethink everything.
Right.
Mostly because at this point she's also gotten totally smashed and is like, this woman is so hot, like a sexy tundra wolf.
Hello, Anshul.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anshul's decided that he would like to participate in the podcast.
That is fine. We like to hear it. Yeah, and it's like that particular conversation is also like indicative of most of their other conversations where it's like, let me find a hole in your taste. Because it doesn't matter to me what you like. What matters to me is what the cultural value of what you like is.
Yes, they spend so much time insulting each other.
Yeah, about, we talked about the coffee before, but it's like all about, oh, are you actually fancy enough to only enjoy the finer things? Well, how about this? Well, how about this? Well, what are your assumptions about this? Like, how can we take each other down a peg? Because that's all that everybody does here is fight over their personal degree of status.
And this is supposed to be flirty.
It's really astounding. It's like mutual negging as the basis for a relationship.
Like, this is actually part of why the frat bro, Gareth was his name, comes off like not nearly as bad as he should, because he's not because he's the richest guy in town, like, the golden boy of the town. He doesn't need to do much of this. And so he actually doesn't spend nearly as much time insulting people.
Like at some point in this book, I was thinking, is this like going to be a Pride and Prejudice / Taming of the Shrew kind of thing? Because Emmy talks a lot about, how proud and stuck up. Well, she doesn't say stuck up, but like, she spends a lot of time self-deprecatingly talking about how proud and rigid she is. Mm-hmm. And, there is a class of romance where, her learning to, to sort of loosen up and enjoy things and, not be too, priggish would be the good thing. And there's of course a host of problematic things about that trope. It's like, because you can read that as, you'll be happy if you learn to submit to the dude,
right?
But we are going exactly the opposite way here, where the moral of the story is, no, you were right to be proud, because in fact it turns out you are secretly the best person in the world, and all of your opinions are correct. Do you think that Emmy is named after Emma? Tally is trying to break down Emmy's idea that Chicago is in some way better than Long Grove. But it turns out the part of Emmy's pride that ends up breaking is the part that wants to be her own person and not the part that likes coffee.
Because this could also, you would think that this could also be the sort of romance where she meets, the unhinged, sensuous, lives life to the fullest, keeps talking about how she's practically Russian, sexy tundra wolf, and that this teaches her to loosen up a bit and, live more in the moment. But again, it doesn't, because Talia says, no, my family can't be trusted with responsibility, and hands over control of the city. So, like, she gets specifically rewarded in multiple ways for being priggish.
Yes. And, like, it's the sort of, it seems like that what the book thinks is an opposition is priggishness versus bitchiness. Like being a hot, mean mess. And, like, one of the conversations she has with her mom was, like, she's observing her mom being petty and catty, and like, it's fine, it's good that you're finally going to take those assholes down a peg or two. And she's like, oh, okay, if I go back to this town to be a housewife, I'm still allowed to be free. And that's how it couches it. It's like, because my mom is free to express these opinions.
Yes.
And it's like, as long as you're allowed to complain audibly about everything that you don't like in life, you're good. That's all that makes up for any of the ways in which your life is currently prescribed, in this tiny little sphere that you've put yourself in.
Yes. So speaking of sort of, personality types and being mean to people, what did you think of her cousin?
Oh, that's it. That felt like the settling of a personal grievance to me.
Like, because in terms of because her cousin is a somewhat resentful teenager, but is again not like competitively mean in the way that many of the other people in this book are. And the entire book, she spends most of the book talking, her cousin gets so much grief narratively for being a tryhard. Her cousin is too into family lore.
Right.
The important thing is instead to just happen to be the heiress and enjoy it, and not be seen to enjoy it too much. Just sort of passively reap the benefit. If you actually want to do any work for it, work for the family business, then that's actually try hard and really cringe.
That's low status. Working is low status.
Working is low status, but it's also cringe. It's oh, that's the girl I used to be before my heart was broken and I got a chic haircut.
Right, exactly. To the extent that we can tease a redeemable human being out of Emmy, it's in her love of the nature around her town, and the old things around her town. If you can possibly prize her love of the old things around her town away from her love of, old things because they're valuable,
Yes. But you do get occasionally some moments where she's appreciating, the lake or the woods or whatever. And you go, okay, right. there is a soul in there somewhere.
Right. And that's her cousin, it's sort of that side of her, unfiltered is her cousin.
Right.
And
that's apparently the part of her that needs to be beaten into shape.
Right. Exactly. And also, her cousin immediately forgives her for usurping her life plan.
Right.
Because
for usurping her life plan
because she's the protagonist.
Right. For usurping her life plan while being really mean to her about it.
The last protagonist we had who was so pampered by the narrative was in the Renunciate books. Just saying. It's truly breathtaking. But yeah, no, the cousin seems like a decent human being, but I hope
her reward.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, because her reward is, well, since you've done all this work, and you've invested all this stuff in keeping the family going while I was off drinking, $20 cocktails, you can take over the family bookstore. You don't get any of the actual money or power, but you can run the bookstore.
Yeah, it's commensurate with your ambition because you're a smaller and less important person than I am.
Right.
Yeah. So in conclusion, of course you went to the University of Chicago. Don't you remember all of these fuckers? I mean, we don't have a business program, but there were plenty of econ majors who were just like this.
Most of the econ majors I knew were from Singapore, so...
No, I got to work with the ones who, were always talking about the 6-figure jobs in downtown Chicago that they were immediately going to get after they graduated and what they were going to do with all the money.
I'm retroactively feeling so much better about my decision to be a depressed shut-in all through college.
Yeah, no, at least I was paid to be around those people. That was at the phone bank when I was trying to get, other people to give me money and wondering why, at least a good half of the alums that I called were like, fuck you, never contact me again, and slammed the phone down when I asked them.
Yes. But anyway, it was just really funny that, it's so clear that the University of Chicago is being used as a status symbol. And, it's like she thought that MIT was, a good stand-in for Harvard.
Right. Yeah, completely different, but it still
works as
the
a
name
status.
Is there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It still works as a status symbol. And
I I know that we have Adventure Time coming, but I kind of want to watch as a one-off there's one episode where Marceline dumps her horrible wizard boyfriend, which does the thing that
I
this
like
story
that
is trying
episode.
to do
I've
much
seen
more
that
successfully.
episode and I enjoyed it. Yes. No, that's a great episode. But I mean, part of that is because, to some degree, that's about rejecting. That's about like rejecting, conformity, theoretically at
Right.
least.
Yeah.
And this is about embracing it. So one of the things that also does interest me about this book is how unappealing the magic is. Because part of the selling point for this is supposed to be, part of why living in, I know I keep saying Long Grove because that's just my, mental template for like the most gentrified suburb I know. But like, going back, like, what is the appeal of Long Grove over Chicago? And it's, and I can kind of buy, oh, it's magic, right? Like literal, actual magic. You can do magic. But the magic doesn't, the magic doesn't seem to bring them any joy. It's like, oh yeah, you can heat your coffee up faster.
No, it's just power.
Right, it's just power. Like the only, she gets a rush from the magic when it's power, and like when she gets to like look and feel really powerful as the like avatar of the contest. But there's no sparkle or joy to it. There's way more sparkle and joy in the cocktails than there is in the like casting literal spells.
Yeah, I mean, because alcohol is her primary vice. And she's only just now discovering,
power.
What being addicted to power is like after being away from it for 5 years. Maybe she was filling the gap there with the booze, and eventually she'll start to be as insufferable about her magic as she was about
right. It's just
cocktails.
Right. It's just that because she seems to genuinely like her life in the city, and I mean it's just as shallow and consumer based as her life in the small town is going to be. But like there is all this excitement to living in a city, and it conveys at least a little bit of that in the beginning of the book. And the magic just, I feel like the thing that this book needs to work is to have this decision be worth something. Like, to have her actually be gaining something instead of just falling back in line with her family plan. And but because the magic isn't particularly exciting, and there's really very little else going on in this town that isn't just incredibly mean people like rich politics, it really does feel like the moral of the story is that doing what your family always wanted you to do and never bothering to develop an independent sense of self is the right thing to do.
Yeah. And maybe for some, it is the thing that is going to make them happy.
It could be.
Or make them happy for whatever value of happy they were able to experience.
Right. It's just really interesting to me in this book because the heterosexual relationship is the revolutionary thing that happens that like causes her to break out of the stifling conformity. And it's the queer relationship that sucks her and locks her back in.
Well, of course, because this is, as we were fond of saying, or as I'm fond of quoting from Disco Elysium, it's impossible to critique capital because it subsumes all critiques into itself and commodifies them. And the instant that people began to use being gay as a way to reject conformity in mainstream society, the seed of, Lockheed Martin at Pride was planted, this book like demonstrates so cleanly the extent to which, letting people who have, status deviations that cannot be wished away with money back into the fold cuts off another avenue of escape.
Yeah. And it is because like, okay, there's plenty of the books that we read are still, they're queer and there's still some, they're still supporting monarchy or, whatever. But the fact that this one is just so much It really is, like, this is literally more regressive, I think, than some Hallmark movies.
I agree. So may I offer this? If you read this book and you found yourself, sympathizing with Emmy and be like, well, yeah, this person is like me in a lot of ways. Maybe I should go back home. Do.
That's mean.
I'm done pretending that people who watch Disney movies are valid. Fuck off with your boring opinions if this is the result of your mediocrity. Be more interesting or fuck off.
Find what makes you happy. And if what makes you happy is like, conspicuous consumerism of luxury goods, and you're able to do that back in your hometown with date your high school crush, then honestly, if that makes you happy, good for you. But also, if you were able to break out of your family and develop a sense of pride in your own accomplishments and in your inherent worth as a human being, you don't actually have to give that up for your hometown.
True, but it is going to suck and you're going to be poor. Or poorer than you otherwise would be.
Also,
anyway.
one last thing for the complaint zone.
Yes.
I have cousins who are about her age who went to similarly suburban high schools, in the Chicago suburbs. And there is no way that her high school was nearly as queer affirming as she implies that it is.
Oh yeah. This is I think this book is almost like projecting the completion of this arc of assimilation, maybe in a kind of wish fulfillment kind of a way. If only this last obstacle to me just going home and being a normal rich person was taken away from me and I could be a normal lesbian rich person.
That's fair. And because it is her best, it's briefly mentioned that her best friend's family, the second richest family, are Black. And
no, the third richest family. Let's be real. They're not richer than the Abramovs.
It's hard to tell.
And they're the people who are perfectly happy.
Yes.
Not getting the thing. They just want to help the white people, get what they want. That's their role in the narrative. And Emma felt so bad about abandoning her high school best friend because they had a real connection and was just going to draw her back into her old life. And that connection with your high school best friend is the most important thing. And if you maybe change and grow and become a different person over time, you might lose that. So never change.
Or if you do change, be willing to drop all of it as soon as you go home.
Right. Because it feels bad when you lose things. And Anyway,
but no, I think that the sort of one nod to racial diversity in this suburban town is similar to the sort of how nobody seems to have any homophobia whatsoever in this rich suburban town.
Did you notice that, the first, richest family, they're descended from King Arthur. The second richest family, they're descended from Baba Yaga. The Black people, they're descended
from Irish Druids. The Black people are descended from Irish Druids.
Of course they are. Right. Anyway,
I think that this is really interesting. I mean, on the one hand, you know what? Let's end this on a positive note. I think that this, in some ways, is a good thing for queer rights in that it has been so normalized that we also get reactionary wish fulfillment, consumer porn love stories. From a, could we have done...
Is that a good thing?
Look, from a, could our liberation have done more to, bring about, true liberation society? No, it's not a good thing. From the, are we less likely to get murdered in the streets and have our rights, to get married taken away from us? Yeah, that actually is a good thing. I would honestly rather there be horrible regressive books and, be able to form a legal partnership that does not allow abusive parents to come and take all my stuff if I die.
Indeed. And that's why you're a liberal centrist cuck. I'll go ahead and edit that out.
It certainly makes you come off as unlikable, Isaac, especially given that that's your politics too. You just think that the rich people stuff is cringe and infuriating.
Alexis thinks that they and I still have the same politics. Little do they know that I got radicalized by podcasts. I can't let them know that I'm an anarchist now, because that's cringe and I would lose status. Let me be clear, I was joking.
I know.
Next time on Wizards vs. Lesbians, we're doing a book called Sappho's Bar and Grill. This is part of an unplanned trilogy of short books that are heavy on the ideology, whether they mean to be or not. Look forward to that. We are having a lot of fun this month.
Look, if our book review podcast can't also be a platform to discuss like important social issues involving, the queer world, then what is even the point other than to like have fun talking about books?
Yeah, exactly. I found this very cathartic in a number of ways. I'm really glad to be back doing it with you.
Yes. Yes, we had a very long hiatus in recording, which nobody will notice because of our buffer was so long, but because of, among other things, my cat, who is the cat in the wizard hat of our Tumblr icon, passed away at the age of 17.
She was the best cat.
She was the best cat.
And she will be sorely missed.
Yes.
But we do have... Anshul the kitten will not fill her shoes,
no.
But he is at least there and audible.
Yes. All right. Anyway, thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.